copyright strike because I have
Oh,
like a restaurant and they're
no, I'm not worried. I'm not worried about that, TD. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Well, I figured I'd pop on because
Thank
it's way
you,
too much to type. So, Keebler. Keebs.
So Keebler's the one that gave us that video of Lobo earlier.
Thank you for that, Keebler. I appreciate that.
Yeah, how are you, Keebler? By the way, are you doing okay? I know that she's struggling with trying to get a generator and stuff and everything. So I hope she's doing all right.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts for tonight, TD?
Well,
do you have any thoughts at all on the movie review on racism?
I really liked it. I really like Gator. I think he has a really sweet disposition. I think he's very genuine, and we need more of that in our world. But I also, I taught a human behavior class for the social work department at Youngstown State University in Ohio. So I did a lot of theories on oppression and all this stuff. So basically, I know that you guys outlined, I think I totally agree with you, Herman. I think the prejudice is more like a preconceived idea, maybe, or maybe something that you might not even know that you have a bias about, but it kind of infiltrates in some way, not bad or good. Sometimes it could be neutral. Sometimes it could even be a good kind of prejudice. But then too, I think racism has a connotation that deals with power and maybe status, if that makes sense. But for instance, I always use the dumb blonde. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Did you hear my analogy earlier? If somebody was to be, say as a young kid, they're attacked by a dog, and then all of a sudden they don't like dogs anymore. It's anecdotal, but
I was bit by a dog, and yeah, exactly.
But are you now afraid of dogs forever, or do you?
It depends on your exposure. I think I'm a therapist too, so I think it depends on your other exposures after that event, or how even maybe your caregivers or your kind of family of origin kind of helps you identify that, okay, not all dogs are like this. Sometimes things just happen. I mean, in my case, I got bit by a Lhasa Apso. So it's it wasn't a pit bull. People, there's that, kids might just have that notation just because of, okay, well, people use pit bulls to fight. So it's okay, they must be tough, they must be mean, where it's that's not really a, it's not the racist kind of stigma against it, but it's kind of well, that's what they've heard, maybe. And then maybe there's a socioeconomic status too. Maybe there's a lot of stray dogs in a bad neighborhood, and maybe some of them would bite because they were acting out of desperation, or they were hungry or trained that way, whatever. So if that makes sense, but that's a really good analogy too.
And that's where I think there's a huge difference between racism and that.
True.
I do
and
think
racism
that
is taught. Racism is definitely taught.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was about to add that. I wanted to add this real quick. I'm glad you said that, TD, because just like a dog can be taught to be mean, somebody can be taught to be racist. If their grandfather was racist, or their mother or father, or somebody in the family was racist.
That's why I look at the politicians, or even the people that speak out about, from in the political sense, or from Trump or to whatever, or some of them, they're we need to go back to how it used to be, or whatever. And I go, at first I go, they must be, from the 50s or whatever. And I'm going, some of these people the same age as me, and they're talking about going back to how it was back in the
backwards.
Even some of the politicians that are in office, that you see that, when they show that, they're doing something that is blatantly either prejudice or racist, or the meaning to
old school thinking. It's
right?
kind of ignorance.
And I look at the person and I go, that guy. I'm 48. And at first, you think it's the older generation that is trying to go back to the 50s and 60s, and they go, that guy's only 48, or that guy's only whatever, and I'm going, either your family grew up that way, and you're keeping the tradition alive, or how
but
do
sometimes,
you have that 50 that mentality of the 50s and 60s or whatever?
True.
April,
Sometimes it takes a village.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
So with the statement of we want to go back to this time, I think you're implying that they want to do like racism from that time when they could just be talking about economic prosperity. That doesn't mean that they want to bring back
I'm not even
slavery or
talking
anything.
about,
I think they would boldly. I'm just saying. I think they would boldly tell you that if
Yeah. Well, not necessarily as a politician. There's a lot
no,
of
maybe not as a
underlying.
politician. I'm just saying. I think there's a difference, but like there has to be a level of implication if you're saying that because they say they want to go back to this time, that they also want to do everything bad in that time.
Well, I think too. Maybe she might. Correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes I know that I mean, all the in Ohio, like all the ads are pertaining to abortion around here, and it's like, okay, what are we? Like my daughter says, she's 16. She said my nana had more rights than I could have if this happened. You know what I mean? So like maybe that kind of component. I'm not sure if that's what
yeah,
she was
no, that's kind of
implying.
what I'm saying. This, like, I'm not talking about specific race, but like even all the female issues that are coming up in the politics and are in the government, and,
Right.
and people like, you know, like, and you want to bring this, like, part of it, they want to put the religion part of it, and go, it's against God, it's not Christian, it's not whatever. I'm like,
It's
Yeah.
because
you're trying
because
to
it's not her body, it's the baby's body.
Well, yeah, it's a joint.
That's why.
I don't consider abortion a basic human right.
And there's so many other factors involved. That it's not just one simplistic individualist. You know what I mean? Like there are so many other things that are involved, and
Yeah.
it's not.
No,
Yeah,
I think there should be exceptions
absolutely.
Oh, I
for
do too.
mother's health, baby's health, and extenuating circumstances, but that's less than 1% of abortions that are performed. The reason that abortions are bad in my eyes are because people are using them as a form of birth control now. And I think
Well,
people
not since we
should
have Plan
be
B.
more
Sometimes,
responsible.
yeah, if they've gone down a
I
lot.
don't think of
Yeah,
I don't think of Plan B as a full abortion.
no, God, no,
I
no.
do think of
Yeah,
that as a way
preventative,
of
second preventative
preventative
measure.
action.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes
And
those things.
some heavy religious people will think of that as bad as well. I don't think
It's
of
just
that as
stopping a
bad. I think of
process. It's if you like if you take your birth control consistently without like going off of, then you could prevent the period. It's just like the same kind of concept, you know, where
but
you're just kind of
I think it's almost rude to women to say that abortion should be um, a form of birth control for the simple fact that saying that they almost didn't understand that sex would lead to a pregnancy.
right, right, right. And that's
That's
the thing
almost a
too.
slap
Like
in the
maybe
face
our
to women. It's
curriculum.
almost a slap, and that's why I say those
Yeah,
exceptions. That's why the first thing I make is the exceptions. Like
absolutely.
when
Yeah.
it's unwilling sex or
Sure. And
something
a
bad.
baby coming from product of rape is not going to have quality of life, you know, like probably.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Well,
I
exactly,
also
and you
think our
never know.
curriculum needs to change in schools, and, you know, state curriculums need to change and include a lot of that because, I mean, it's just science too, you know, like, and you have to be a realist. Like kids are doing it, you know, except for my daughter.
Well,
My daughter is actually really good, but
I just wish we could get to some kind of like common acceptance. Like even if we can't decide a term for when abortion is acceptable, can we at
Mhm.
least put a limit on when it's not acceptable? Like
Sure. Or
there's
maybe you get fined
there's at
after so
least
many or something like that.
no.
Or, yeah.
There's at least 3 states that you can have an abortion up to 9 months and after
Oh, like, really?
in the
I didn't
United
even know
States.
that.
So that's after a pregnancy.
Phew.
There's 3 states in the United States, and because we took down Roe v. Wade, those states have the right to do that.
Yeah, like what
So
about mandatory
it does
classes
go
if
back.
you decide to get
It
one or
does go back to
something?
the state.
Yeah,
Yeah, it does go back to the states with taking out Roe v. Wade, but it shows you which states are really extreme about this, and they
right,
don't want to. On whatever side, whether it's they want no
right.
abortions or they want abortions up to 9 months and after, which is
Yeah,
insane, and nobody
I
can
mean,
find
nine
the
months and
middle
after
ground.
you're killing the baby. I mean, like, I mean, it's obvious,
Yeah.
you know, like it's yeah. I mean, when someone could adopt that baby, I don't know. But also, stem cells is a huge thing. So, do they want those stem cells? You know what I mean? It's like it's kind of crazy.
Oh
It
yeah,
gets pretty crazy. Yeah.
yeah.
But
When you
we
start
might have
talking
got
about
off track
sales,
a little
yeah.
bit, but that happens. I'm ADHD. It happens sometimes, but. But definitely, I think the position of power to me is one thing that sticks out of or like inequality of like, you know, well, they're less than because I'm this and they're this or something, you know. but it's easy to say too. I'm a white girl that teaches hip hop dance fitness, so I actually get like the good prejudice where sometimes I have guys that say like I've never known a white girl to move like that, and I'm like thank you so much, you know. So I guess there could be positive prejudices too sometimes.
There we go. I'm HDD. I'm HD. You might be TD. I'm HDD, which is
Nice.
Herman deficit disorder.
Oh, that's nice.
It's rough. It's rough. I've been living with it for a while. I've been
Me
living
too.
with
I
it
have
my
all
whole
the
life.
letters. I'm a therapist with all the letters.
There we go.
I have more thoughts before breakfast than most people have all day, and then I'm just like stuck with them. Yeah.
So I have to ask you something, TD, as a therapist, because I've been through therapy before.
Mm-hmm.
Do you yourself have a therapist to deal with all the shit you have to deal with?
I do. I mean, I haven't gone recently, but I actually, I mean, I lost my parents last year within 6 months of each other.
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you. But obviously, I mean, how can I be a firm believer if I didn't go myself? Although it's hard to find a therapist for a therapist, because it's, you know, we just know a lot, and we, you know, you have to full disclosure and trust that full disclosure. But I think everybody needs stress management, and we all have more issues than Sports Illustrated. So like in my eyes, everybody needs like a non-biased kind of like maybe point of view or a way to manage that stress, or even to goal set and, you know, have an accountability coach. I think that's healthy too. Yeah. So, I mean, my clientele is a little bit different right now because I just got hired. I have my own practice, but I did just get hired at a jail. So I work at a jail in like Youngstown. So it's definitely a unique kind of position. So, I mean, I have to be like responsible for putting people on suicide watch, taking them off suicide watch, stuff like that. Yeah. So it gets very deep, but it also gets very, you know, rewarding when you have somebody that maybe comes to jail and they just didn't even know about how good therapy was or how it can help them. And like, wow, this feels really great. My family puts a fun and dysfunctional. Why didn't I talk about this before? You know? So
that's a whole other.
Yes, definitely. So definitely. So no. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, April. Please finish. I think I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, so I have a lot of questions now because, you know, I always want to get into therapy, not get into therapy myself, but so therapists have a full disclosure thing with their clients, correct?
Oh yeah, I'm not allowed to violate confidentiality except for, and it's child abuse. If they say they're going to hurt themselves and have a plan, or hurt someone else and have a plan. So I've had women that say, I feel like I'm going to kill my husband. I'm like, well, how would you do it if you could? You know, it's like, just because you say that doesn't mean you're going to do it. But then if you have something planned out, you have to bring the confidentiality. And it used to be elder abuse, but now they don't care about the old people. They're like, it's fine. You don't have to like break confidentiality for that.
But when you're talking, so say you're talking to your therapist, you have to be vague about what you bring up. Like, so say something affected you in a therapy session with a client. Can you mention that without mentioning the client's name, or do you have to keep it confident? I was just wondering about that because, like, if someone tells you, hey, you know, I'm suicidal, or hey, you know, I'm feeling like this today.
Right. I mean, it's good to consult. I'd say probably consult without your own therapist. You know what I mean? Like, but that's just my opinion. So you could like secrets keep you sick. If you're not able to fully be vulnerable, then what are you withholding? And then are you able to fully like either heal or progress or, you know, make changes? So that's how I feel. But also too, I mean, and not every system's perfect. So you might have like the couple that, I mean, I recently had a client that she was recently widowed and she was dating a guy, and he's a clear, like, I know about this guy because I had another client dating him pretty much around, there's some gray area. I could not say like, hey, he's dating someone else. He's a clear alcoholic. She's like, he doesn't even drink. I'm like, that's wrong. He's an alcoholic. She's like, he has a great house. I'm like, oh, that's wrong. He's homeless. He said he worked for this one place. No, he works at a McDonald's by that place. Right. So it's like, but so all I could do was meet her where she was and say like, she's like, I don't know, I'm getting some red flags. My sister, I'm like, well, let's dive into those a little bit more. What do you think about doing like a little background check or something? So I'm able to like, but I had to like put that vault in there and like stick it, you know, where I wanted to be like, girl, get away. Because she just got, she was with a man for 35 years and he passed away, and like she's in a vulnerable state and a good person. I'm like, I don't want her. She's such a freaking liar. You know, I'm like, are you kidding me? Out of all the people in this town that like they have to be dating the same person, I'm like, this one gets around, man. Yeah, like, dang. Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's hard sometimes. I'm going with a lot of secrets when I get cremated or whatever. And I've got some politicians that have like substance abuse issues because I'm an addiction counselor too, and
Right.
it's I have a lot of stuff in this vault up here.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. I was talking to a therapist because they always ask my background religiously, and I'm a Greek Orthodox Christian, so I go through confession, which is very similar to therapy. And the priest or the bishop or whoever's hearing the confession can't say anything, about it.
Do you trust that though? Do you trust that?
I'm sorry.
Do you trust that they will
I
not
do.
repeat it?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I trust that. Yes.
Yeah.
They can if it's something illegal.
Right.
Oh,
yes. They can.
illegal?
They can. If you say
Criminal.
hey,
Something
if you say
criminal.
if you say
Yeah, I'm
hey,
not
I
even
just
allowed if it's
yeah. If you say hey, I just murdered somebody, they're going to be like, okay, well, we got to report you for this. Sorry.
I had a client that was wanted for murder, and they had the thing on the news. They were like, "She's at large." I'm like, "Dude, she was in my office earlier, so I don't know who you got investigating." But so I encouraged her to turn herself in, and she did. So
yeah, wow.
Yeah, but I'm like, yeah, real like good detective work. She was literally, if you would have followed her car around today, you would have seen her. And she was in my office. You know.
Oh my.
Yeah.
We were talking about that the other day, Herman.
Report that you're a what's it called? Mandatory.
Yeah, we're a mandatory reporter. For
Mandated.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were we talking about, Jacob? What were you saying?
We were talking about this the other day, that almost all religions have this form of therapy, whether it's auditing in Scientology, or whether it's confession, or whether it's just sitting down and talking to your pastor. Yeah, all of them have.
Yeah, they do.
And
definitely.
And I wish that there was more, I guess, expansion of that. Like, for instance, I like the concept of doing the premarital mandatory meeting with the priest or reverend or pastor, but why don't they even do like let's do a 6 months check-in, even if it's to talk about good stuff that each other is doing, or because there's always an adjustment regardless how like great that you get along, and there's good or bad, there's gonna be an adjustment. It's change, it's all blending, maybe all this stuff. So I wish that they would or for instance, like my gastric bypass people who have to go to like one therapy appointment and get the go. It's like, well, why don't you? Because I have clients that have had gastric bypass. They do so much better if they continue therapy along with it. Because there's emotional stuff behind a lot of the binge eating, in my opinion. But sorry to get guys off topic.
No, it's okay.
I've heard it said that anyone who's married should be in marriage counseling.
I completely agree. Even if it is it's good to praise in front of other people. It's the concept of like the 5 love languages too. Of like sometimes you could have good intentions, but unless you're on the same page, I use the 5 love languages a lot with therapy, and that has a deep like kind of a Christian component too. But you could if they aren't like I have a lot of LGBTQ plus clients that maybe don't like practice or conform to one religion, but you can take the underlining principle of Christianity out of that and still use that concept. As far as like you could have good intentions, but if you're not speaking the language the other person wants to hear, then you're not going to mesh well. If that makes sense. But
my pastor won't marry a couple unless they've done 6 months of counseling with him.
Good. That's good. Fantastic.
That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see a study to compare the ones that haven't had that and then the ones that have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I also think couples should take the sanctity of marriage out of it, because I do think those trials and tribulations that you're going to go through in a relationship are the tests that you need to see if it's going to be a lasting experience or not. Like, there's only so much. It's just like a baby. There's only so much you can prepare for it. You can take a parenting class before you have a baby, but you're not going to figure it all out.
People say your lives will change, but you don't know until you have a baby. Yeah, exactly. Well, that, and I think too, like, even, there's also, people fight, but do you learn how to fight fair, like in a class at school? No. Do you learn how to fight fair from your parents? No, I know I didn't, so like that's.
I think you do. I think you do in trained fighting. I do think there is something to that where people do not want you using your violence in the wrong way. I think people that are actually trained
not even
in
that,
martial
but
art,
verbally fighting fair. So like no name calling. Like there's the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which is like the 4 things that if you do these things, it's going to kill the conversation. It's really going to destroy a relationship. So like holding people contempt. So like, you're going to go cry because that's what you do. You cry, or name calling, stonewalling, ignoring the silent treatment, or criticism, so it's like rather than pointing out like the behavior or the like calling names and point out the behavior. Like rather than saying you're lazy, saying like, you know, when you don't do the dishes, it makes me feel like you're not really helping. You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah, because there's a way of holding people accountable without actually without making them feel bad intentionally.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
applying things